What is up, guys? Aiden Smith, Paint Pro Coaching, coming at you with a video on how to actually pay your painters. So we're going to be talking about W-2s, we're going to be talking about 1099s, hourly guys, subcontractors. We're going to cover it to make sure that you are educated on how to pay your guys and that you aren't in the gray area, which we'll talk about in a second. So first off, what are the different ways you can pay painters? All right, so there's hourly, right, where you have somebody that you control their schedule, you tell them exactly when to come in, exactly when to clock out. Anytime they work for you, they have to be on an hourly schedule, and you pay them weekly or bi-weekly through a payroll company, ideally, right? That's your first employee. You pay them 20 bucks an hour. That's an employee model. The second model is the subcontractor model, right, where you don't necessarily control their schedule, but you tell them, hey, here are the jobs you have to take care of, make sure they're done, maybe meet them there and kind of walk them through the scope of work, but you're not dictating the exact time they show up, right? Because if you were to, then you'd be treating them as an employee, and there's different taxes and paperwork involved. So it's extremely important that you separate the two, but I know a lot of guys are in that gray area where they hire 1099ers, which are basically guys that they want as an employee, but don't necessarily want to hire a payroll company or pay the extra taxes involved. And to the IRS, that's a big no-no. So you have to be really clear with your guys exactly how you're set up in the relationship. So they're W-2, it's through a payroll company, and you have that employee model and all the things that come along with that. And if you're a subcontractor, a true subcontractor, ideally they're their own company with an LLC, with the necessary insurance, workers' comp, whatever is needed in your state to operate like a legal and in good standing painting company. They have to have all that in order to subcontract from you, and then you pay their company name, right? Like John's Painting. W-2, you work through a payroll company, you send their hours in every single week or bi-weekly, payroll taxes are deducted, etc., etc. So try and stay out of that gray area where you're treating a guy that's not his own company like an employee, right? We want to make sure we're either doing one or the other. So just a quick tip before I even get into any of the numbers, just to make sure you're doing it the right way. To actually pay these guys, W-2s are really easy, right? It's like, yes, you have to pay the extra workers' comp and payroll tax and stuff like that, depending on your state, but you pay them an hourly amount, right? And that's going to be based on how much you're selling jobs for, all right? So I have guys that are selling jobs at $125 an hour, right? And just to kind of give you reference, and I'll kind of work through a quick equation, basically for every day that a guy is on the job, they're charging $1,000 in labor. So because they're charging so much and they're such a premium brand and they're such, great sales strategies in order to achieve that high amount hourly rate, they're able to pay their guys more because they have more wiggle room, right? So they can afford to pay a guy $35, $40 an hour to be a lead supervisor. And that's just going to be what helps them hit their numbers, right? It doesn't really matter for them because their margins are still going to be within that 45 to 55% range. Whereas somebody that's charging a lot less, maybe even half of that, right, that's at that 70 to 75 range, you're going to be limited to how much you could pay a guy hourly, right? You're going to have to come down to that 25, maybe tops 30 bucks an hour range, because you don't want your numbers to be really low, right? Ideally, you're walking away gross margin, and that's after labor and materials, between 45 to 55%. The most elite companies out there are at 65 and 60%, but if you're within 45 to 55, you're in pretty good standing. So just keep in mind that there has to be a gap, right? You can't just bring a guy in and pay him $55 an hour and then you're only charging 80 bucks an hour, right, sell rate, because you're only going to be making like 15-20% margin after everything. You have to have healthy numbers in order to grow a healthy business. So keep in mind when giving raises, right, don't just be handing out because it feels good. Make sure the numbers work. Run it through ChatGPT, talk to somebody or talk to our team, right, to work through it. Schedule a discovery call with us, link in the bio or caption wherever this video URL will be, but you get the point. It has to work within your numbers. But yeah, if you're starting out in, let's just say Florida, right, and you're paying a helper 18 bucks an hour and you're charging 85 an hour for your sales rate, boom, that's perfect. Or you hire a supervisor, that's $29 an hour and you're still charging 75 to 80, you're still good. Those numbers math, all right? So that's how you pay painters. When it comes to subcontractors, the biggest mistake I see painters make is going, hey Joe, I got this job, can you go look at it or walk it with me and give me a price? That is the biggest mistake, because now your number and what you sell it at is dictated by that subcontractor, who probably knows how to estimate even less than you, right? So now you're setting yourself up for failure, and you have to mark a job up that may not even be what the job should be, right? It's like you're relying on somebody else's number for your success. So what I would recommend is to dial in your estimating, whether you go with square footage pricing, per room pricing, eyeballing, or production rates. We personally teach production rates to our clients. But if you don't dial in your estimating, now you're leaving it up to guesswork. And even worse, if you're leaving it up to your subcontractor to give you a number, now you're putting all your success in his hands. So definitely don't go down that road. What I really suggest is coming up with that your own number to sell it for, right? And then giving him a payout. Like, hey Joe, just landed this job. Here's the work order, right? Payout's $3,500. Let me know what you think. It should take 3 to 4 days, 2 guys, whatever it is, whatever that maths out to. And then he can say yes or no. And as long as you feel confident in those numbers, then you know that, hey, that's all you can do because that's what your margin allows, right? And if you underbid it and you have to give a little more, that just is what it is. But it's good to have 1, 2, or even 3 subs available to run that number by and see who would like to actually get on the schedule with it, right? So there's a good app out there in software called Hey Pros where you can actually send work orders and payouts out to a bunch of subcontractors. You can have 10, 20 subcontractors and say, hey, here's the job available. Here's all the details, photos. Here's the payout. Who wants it? And they can bid on it. So that's like the best, most optimized way to do it. But if you have a guy that you've been using for a while and you kind of want to just switch things up and make sure that you're actually giving him a payout that's fair, I would go ahead and dial in my estimating and give him a payout based on a percentage again, right? So what I see across the industry, and this is going to be a little bit wide of a range, but between 30 and 45% in labor in the total job payout, right? So if it's a $10,000 job, you're basically going to say, hey, here's 35% of that, $3,500, right? And it may vary. You may be up to 45%, right? Based on your numbers, or you may be down to 30. The thing is, some companies charge enough to where the 30% they actually pay out is more than 45% for most companies. So I'm gonna say that again. Basically, whenever you get to a point in your company where you're charging out the wazoo $125, $150 an hour, whatever it is, and you're able to land those jobs, you can afford to pay out a lower percentage because you're getting so much more for the value you offer, right? Maybe your processes, your software, and everything you're doing inside your company is super dialed in that you can afford to have those amazing margins, and your subcontractors are still happy with a little bit lower of a payout. So it's just the way the maths, and some companies are able to do it, some are not, right? Some are more competitive. They're kind of in that medium tier price range, or just maybe at the edge of that premium, and they're able to just pay out that 40 to 45%. Some guys want to say 50 to 55%. But at the end of the day, your net margins are going to be way too low, and it's a recipe for disaster for your business. So those are my thoughts. You can also integrate some incentives. So maybe you do pay at 35, but if they get a review, they do a final walkthrough, they do everything start to finish, and the customer's super happy, you can give them a 2.5 to 5% raise, right, on that job, right? There's an incentive that they can work towards as long as they follow all your processes. So I hope that helped. I hope that cleared up some confusion about the different types of painters and subs and ways you can pay guys, how to pay them, what to base it off of. And yeah, guys, so follow us, like, subscribe, and until the next one.